Very good morning, dear students. I welcome you for the today's session, and this session we are going to start with a new chapter, that is organization of data. Here, in a statistical analysis, after collection of data, the next foremost important step is organization of data. In a statistical process, after the collection of data, most important and very essential step, that is nothing but organization of data. We all know that whatever the things, if we are collect without proper organization, it is impossible to analyze, or it is impossible to get clearance from our things. That's why whatever the collections, after the collection of things, we need to organize in a proper order. Here, organization is nothing but is the process of arranging the things or data based on its common characteristics. Here, organization is nothing but organization is the process of organizing or arranging the things or data based on its characteristics or attributes, is nothing but organization. Organization refers to it is a process of arranging the data into a groups or classes based on common characteristics. Based on common characteristics. Here, organization refers to arranging the data into a groups or classes based on common characteristics, is nothing but organization of data. I will give one example to analyze what is exactly organization. You are, after getting admission into the college, maybe you have collected different kinds of notes and homework books and textbooks of all your subjects, and you have kept in one side all the subjects notes, all the subjects homework books, and all the subjects textbook you have kept in one row, same row. If you want any notebook, then you have to search all the books which you have, the bundle of books. Out of that bundle of books, you need, to get one particular notes, you need to search all the notes in order to get the particular notes. Instead of that, if we organize the entire collection of books based on the subject wise, economic subject books, notes, homework in one side, and in the same way accountancy subject notes, books and homework notes, if we kept in one side or one row, and on the same way a business studies notes, homework book and textbook in one row, and computer science textbook, homework book and notes in one row, then it is easy to pick particular book. If you want economics book, you will take from the economic rack. Likewise, if you want accountancy book, you will pick up from the accountancy rack. Then it makes us to easy to analyze and to get the things in an order. Like that's why after the collection of the things, we need to properly organize the things based on the criteria or based on the characteristics. Likewise, whatever the collection of books you have, you may be classified based on the subjects, or you also can classify your collection of books likewise all the subjects textbooks in one row and all the subjects notes books in one row, as well as all the subjects homework books in one row. If you want any subject homework book, you will pick up the particular book from the homework book rack. If you want a textbook, you will take a textbook from that particular rack. How it will be now the things become easy after organizing in a proper order. What happened? It become easy to pick up the particular notebook or particular textbook or particular homework book because of organizing the things in a proper order. In the same way, in a statistical analysis also, after collection of data, it is impossible to analyze the statistics. That's why if you want to analyze in a proper order, or if you want to get interpretation or conclusion, then after collection of data, we should organize the things based on different characteristics or different criteria. We should arrange the data into a proper order or in a proper step. That is what nothing but organization of data. I hope you understood. Organization of data is nothing but classifying or arranging the data in a proper order based on the common characteristics. And before going to the in-depth of this topic, we need to know the one more important topic of the chapter, that is what is raw data. What is raw data? Here, whatever the data we have collected, about the particular statistical analysis, that can be called as the collected information, can be called as the data. But the data which is not organized in a proper way, or unorganized data or unclassified data, is called as raw data. Raw data means unorganized or unclassified data is called as raw data. Whatever the data we have collected and we kept in the same form without organizing or without classifying in a particular order, that data will be called as raw data. The data which is unorganized or unclassified in any order, without any order or in any order. If you are not organized the data, that particular data is considered as raw data. They will ask for 1 mark this question. What is raw data? The raw data refers to unorganized or unclassified data. Data refers to the data which is unorganized or unclassified, is called as raw data. Here, when the data is in raw format, or even the data is not properly organized, it is impossible to present and also to analyze the statistical data. For the proper standardization and also for the comparison of the data, we need to first organize in a proper order. And here I will give an example. If I collected the marks of 50 students, in an economics subject, the marks of 50 students in an economics subject, without and that data I have not organized in any order. But with the help of that data, it is impossible to comparison and it is impossible to give a conclusion relating to a statistics. That's why the raw data is impossible. With the help of raw data, it is impossible to come for the statistical analysis and conclusion. Before that, whatever the raw data we have to collect, that we need to organize in the order. Yeah. Now, here we have example for raw data. Now we have collected the marks of 50 students in the classroom relating to an economics subject. Relating to economics subject, we have collected 50 students marks. Observe here the 50 students marks. Here with this data, we are unable to make comparison. If anybody asks how many first class students in the economics class or in economics test, it is impossible to come to the conclusion based on the raw data. When the data is in raw form, we are not organized or we are not classified in an order, it is impossible to come for the conclusion or it is make difficult to give an interpretation. Now, if you want to know how many are first class, again we should go and we should observe each and every marks of the student and then we should give a interpretation and then only we can able to answer to a particular question. This is what, because of the unclassified data, we can't able to present or we can't able to give a proper analysis to a particular thing. That's why after the collection of data relating to any particular topic, we need to make organize or we need to properly classify the things based on the common characteristics or based on some criteria how we want for our statistical analysis, how we need to organize or how we need to classify. In that way, we need to classify the collected data. Now, for example, now I need to know how many are failures, how many are just pass students, how many are pass second class student, how many are first class student and how many have got distinction in the economic subject. Then this particular data I will organize in the way how I need in the classes 0 to 35, how many students got marks of students. Here 0 to 35, how many have got? I will write their number of students. And 35 to 50 marks, how many students got the marks? I will write the particular marks here. And from 50 to 60 marks. And from 60 to 85 marks. And from 85 to 100 marks, how many have got? I will make a clear thing and I will write here. Then when I classify this entire data into a particular classes or in a particular order, then it will make me to analyze easily how many students have got fail marks, how many students got average, it means passing marks, and how many students got second class marks and how many students got first class marks and how many students have got the above 85 means distinction marks in my subject. I can make clear understanding. That's why even in the statistical analysis also, with the help of unclassified or unorganized data, it is impossible to come to the conclusion of analysis. That's why for the proper analysis and to get a proper conclusion in a statistical study, we need to organize the things in a proper order, how the investigator or the agent is needed. That is what the classification or organization of data. So, therefore, we have understood well, after the collection of data for the better or for the systematical statistical analysis, next after the collection we need to properly organize or classify the data. Then only it will be easy to make a systematical statistical survey. In that way, here first we need to know what is classification of data. Here classification of data refers to the classification of data refers to arranging or organizing the data into a groups or classes based on some criteria. Here, classification of data is nothing but it refers to organizing or arranging or organizing the collected data into a groups or classes based on some criteria or based on the necessity of an investigator. When he is going to organize or arranging the data, that is nothing but classification of data. Here, the classification of data is in 4 types. The data we can able to classify in the 4 forms are 4 types. Here, the 4 types of classification are: first one, the types of classification of data. In that first one, chronological classification. First one, chronological classification, and second one, spatial classification, and third one, quantitative classification. Qualitative classification, and fourth, at last type of classification of data is quantitative classification. These are the 4 types of classification of data. In that first type of classification is chronological classification. Here, the chronological classification is nothing but geographical classification. It is also called as geographical classification. Chronological means the chronological classification is also called as time series classification. Here, under the chronological classification, we will going to classify the data based on the time duration. Under the chronological classification, we are going to classify the data, or we are going to arrange the data based on the time duration. duration such as based on the hours, weeks, days, months and years. If we classify the data or if we arrange the data, then that kind of arrangement or that kind of classification will be called as chronological classification. I will explain once again. Here the chronological classification means here the data will be going to classify based on time duration such as hours, weeks, days, months, years. And next one, spatial classification. This spatial classification is also called as geographical classification. Here we are going to arrange or we are going to classify the data based on the geographical locations such as city-wise, districts-wise, state-wise and country-wise. If we organize the data, that kind of organization or classification will be called as spatial classification. And one more, quantitative classification. Here, under the qualitative classification, the investigator will be classify the data based on the qualitative characteristics or attributes of the data. Example, based on the sex, male, female. If the data we are going to classify based on the sex, based on the religion and based on the gender is also called as qualitative classification. The extra qualities are the extra attributes. Based on these attributes, if we are going to classify the data based on the qualities, that kind of classification will be called as qualitative classification. And last, one more type of classification is quantitative. Here itself it is indicating quantitative classification means that when the data is organizing or classifying based on the quantitative attributes, based on the quantitative attributes or characteristics like weight, height, age, income, marks. Based on the characteristics like this, if we organize the data, that kind of organization or classification will be called as quantitative classification. Once again, the first type of classification is chronological, second one spatial, qualitative and quantitative classification. The data we can be classified based on this four category. And now we'll discuss one by one with the example all these classifications of data. The first type of classification is chronological classification. Chronological classification is nothing but if the data is organized based on time duration such as hours, days, weeks, months and years, then that kind of classification will be called as chronological classification. Here chronology means based on time series, based on time changes. If we organize the data, that can be called chronological classification. For example, take for example, the years. If we are collected the number of population or the changes in the population rate from 1950. We have collected the data relating to a population from 1950. And after collection of the data relating to a population, if we are going to organize or if we are going to classify the data which we have collected relating to the population based on the years, then that can be called as chronological classification. Here in the first column, years, and in the second column, population in crores. In 1951, 1961, 1971, 1981, 1991 and 2001. In 1951, the total population of a country is 35 crores 7 lakhs. And in the same way, in 1961, the total population of a country is 43 crores 5 lakh. And in 1971, the total population of a country is 54 crores 6 lakhs. And in 1881, the total population of a country is 68 crores 4 lakh. And in 1991, the total population of a country is 81 crore 5 lakh. And in 2001, the total population of a country, in 2011, the total population of a country is in 2001, total population of a country is 102.3 crores. Likewise, whatever the data we have collected relating to the population, we are organized the data in the form of years. This kind of classification will be called as chronological classification. Whatever the data, if we are classified based on years or based on hours, for example, the rate of sunshine in the first 2 hours of the morning from 9 to 11, and in our afternoon session from 2 to 4, and evening session from 6 to 8, and at the night, if we are classify the sunshine rate based on the hours, and in the same way, week-wise or in the same way, month-wise or in the year-wise, that will be called as chronological classification. Next we move to the one more type of classification of data. The next type of classification is spatial classification. Here, spatial classification refers to the data when we are going to organize or when we are going to classify based on the geographical locations. If the investigator data is organized or classified based on geographical locations such as cities, districts, states, and country. Then that kind of classification will be called as spatial classification, or it's also called as geographical classification. Under this, geographical or spatial classification means when the data is organized or classified based on the geographical areas or locations. Then example, cities, districts, states and country-wise, then that will be called as spatial classification. Now take an example. For instance, here if we have collected the production of wheat for hectare in a different country, production of wheat in a world in a different countries. Example, name of a country and production of wheat. Production of wheat per acre. Here, America, Brazil, China, Denmark, France, India. Here one thing you need to understand, here we have collected the production capacity of a world relating to a wheat, and after the collection of the data relating to a wheat production, we are going to classify the wheat production of a world in a form of country wise. Likewise, when the data we are going to classify or we are going to organize based on the geographical locations, wherever it is, whatever it is, maybe based on city or based on district or based on states or country, then that will be called as spatial classification. Here we have taken example based on the country wise. Here in America, the production of wheat for acre is 19,925 kgs, and in the same way, the production of wheat in Brazil is 127 kgs per acre, and at the same time, the production of wheat in China is 893 kgs per acre, and Denmark is going to producing 225 kg of wheat per acre, and France is going to producing 439 kgs for 1 acre, and also in India we are producing the wheat per acre is 863 kgs. Likewise, the production of wheat based in different countries. Likewise, if we are based on the geographical location, we organize the data that will be called as spatial classification. And next, one more type of classification is qualitative classification. Qualitative classification. Here, qualitative classification is nothing but when we organize the data data, or when we classify the data based on the qualitative attributes or characteristics like depends on sex or the gender, or depends on the religion. Likewise, if we are going to classify the data, then that will be called as qualitative classification. The data, if the data is classified based on qualitative characteristics or attributes such as based on the gender or sex, gender or religion, and based on literacy, then that will be called as qualitative classification. Make a note here, quality, based on the quality or the special quality of a person or the data. If we are going to classify, that can be called as qualitative classification. Example, if the total population, if you are going to classify based on either gender like female and male, as well as with their special quality, that is whether they are married and unmarried. Here also, after classifying the female and male, the male will also be classified as a married or unmarried, or a literate and illiterates. This type of classification will be called as qualitative classification, and this class we have discussed the three types of classification. One is chronological, spatial and qualitative classification, and next class we will continue the one more type of classification, that is quantitative classification. Thank you everyone for listening.